You know, for years, I thought I would never give Star Wars up, but quite frankly, they have been running around letting me down and deserting me, so I think it's time for me to give them up. Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. I genuinely can't believe that I started this video with a spoken rickroll, and I'm so sorry for that, but I've been thinking, and as of the time of this video's recording, we're just a few days from rolling over and turning the calendar from 2024 to 2025. It's almost a new year. And in thinking about Star Wars this year for me, I mean, granted, I've had several other disappointments with other beloved IPs, but Star Wars really has it's been a bad year, and I started thinking that maybe it's time I leave Star Wars in 2024. The Star Wars social media actually posted a year in review for Star Wars, and I went through it and I found some highlights that have really driven me to an admittedly sad conclusion when it comes to Star Wars. But first, a word from this video's sponsor. With the holidays coming up, things are more hectic than ever. Folks are driving distracted on the road, mistakes are happening at stores and at work. And without a strong personal injury firm to represent you, an accident could mean a real disaster. That's where Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, comes in. With over 1,000 attorneys operating in all 50 states and over 30 years of experience, they are all about being for the people. And that means they fight to get you the compensation you deserve if you become their client. Morgan & Morgan won't settle for lowball offers. In the past few months in Florida alone, they've gotten a victim $12 million for their case, over 34 times the highest insurance offer. And the best part, Morgan & Morgan's fee is absolutely free unless you win. One less thing to worry about. If you've ever been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions. And you're only a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. It's so easy. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/snarky in the description, or scan the QR code on the screen to get started. The first thing that they mentioned on this year in review was, one, the announcement of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, which they're getting set to release in the year 2026. And I think that they thought that that was a highlight, maybe for 5-year-olds or parents with children. I was so incredibly disappointed with season 3 of The Mandalorian that all of my reviews, yes, they were roast sessions, unfortunately, but they were so sad for me to do because I was obsessed with The Mandalorian. I literally, hold on a second, because you're not gonna believe me. I have a whole cardboard cutout of him. This was my honey, okay? Because my other honey, my main honey, Boba Fett, was in the Sarlacc pit, and then they let him out of the Sarlacc pit, and they made a laughingstock of him, so I had to keep dreaming of Mando, and then they f***ed him up and emasculated him and made him a babysitter for the entire 3rd season, and now what do I have? A cardboard cutout that I don't even want to look at when I come in my room. I still feel bad about it. I'm sorry that you guys had to see that, but the point is that I loved The Mandalorian. I couldn't think of a universe back then where if you told me, oh my god, he's getting like a live action movie and it's gonna be awesome, I didn't think that there would ever be a day that I was like, f this, don't make any more. And that's exactly how I felt, because the 1st and 2nd seasons came to a beautiful conclusion that then got watered down and made f***ing nonsensical with the 3rd one. So you think they're gonna do any better of a job with a film? Keep it, I don't want this. And then the 2nd one was season 2 of Ahsoka. Crickets, babe. I couldn't even finish Ahsoka. And I'm sure that's mostly on me being a royal pain in the ass. It's fine, it's in the name. But the whole point was that I wanted to really like Ahsoka, and I watched the first 3 episodes and I just thought they were lame. I didn't hate them enough to review them for the purpose of roasting and trying to be funny. I didn't like it enough to keep watching. I just thought it was a lame show. And it was easy for me to just turn it off and never bother with it again. Which is really difficult to do with Star Wars, especially with somebody as obsessive and willing to put themselves through nonsense as me. Then they mentioned the series finale of Bad Batch, which I can neither complain about nor celebrate. That's another show that I just couldn't get into, and I know a lot of people say great things about it, but it was just something that I personally couldn't get into. And notice the sentiments on Bad Batch and Ahsoka are very similar, and I want to get to that later on in the video. They mentioned Tales of the Empire. I'd like to give you a long drawn-out rant on that, but that was just weak sauce personified. It's not even worth discussing, in my opinion. In the gaming department, Star Wars Outlaws. Did anybody actually give a shit about that? And the two that I've saved for last, they did, of course, highlight the Acolyte and what a unique perspective and what a great time period it went over. I'm shocked that they even acknowledged that show's existence, because not only did they initially try wiping all the Acolyte merchandise from the online Disney store, but then they have also continuously just attacked the fans whose criticisms were things like, this was badly written, this was boring, I didn't like the action, this broke canon, and they instead said, you're racist, you're misogynistic, you're homophobic, you're queerphobic, whatever the f they came up with, to invalidate any possible argument that you might have, because it's easier to sling insults than to take valid criticism. And the last Star Wars thing that happened this year that I've been getting lots of questions about, Skeleton Crew dropped, and if I remember correctly, that's still going on right now. Now, admittedly, I did initially have some intentions to check out Skeleton Crew just because it had a Star Wars label on it, and then the week that it came out, I was out of town, and then when the next episode came out, I was sick and didn't feel like putting myself through it because I couldn't review it. And what I want to point out is that typically when something like that would happen back in the day with Star Wars, I would be dying to play catch up and to be able to talk about it with my friends and look at lore online and go to Tumblr and see fan art and GIFs and all that stuff. And one could try and make the argument that, yeah, I'm a lot older now than I was when I got into Star Wars, but I also am an absolute child for the things that I get obsessive about, regardless of how relevant or irrelevant that thing is. So it's really not a matter of I've matured past the need for Star Wars. No, it's that Star Wars has transformed itself into something that I just don't give a shit about. And that's, I think, the worst part about this, because I loved Star Wars. I started, obviously, with the original trilogy, and I fell in love with it. I remember that I sat down with my dad to watch the originals and the prequels all in one day. He said to me, knowing my obsessive personality, I hope this doesn't become a thing for you. And I was like, I don't give a about Star Wars. Star Wars is for dorks. Yes, I literally thought this when I was a kid who was already obsessed with comic books and wore Hello Kitty ears everywhere. Yeah, I've never been one to talk. But the point is that I sat down and I was introduced to a galaxy far, far away, and I absolutely fell in love with it. For years, I just loved Star Wars, and there was so much beauty and such great stories and fantastic characters in the extended universe. I mean, the extended universe is pretty much the entire thing that put Boba Fett on a pedestal for me for as long as he was on it. And then we got the sequels. I know a lot of you folks pretty much lost your love for Star Wars with the sequel trilogy, because that was essentially a big enough betrayal by Disney to show you that that was enough. But for me, I sat through all 3 movies in theaters, and while I thought they were awful and they got progressively worse, and I thought they were absolute disgraces in regards of the legacy of Star Wars, I was still willing to love Star Wars despite that and see what Disney did next. I would love nothing more than to sit here and tell you that Disney has never done anything with Star Wars that I liked. And yet season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian had me head over heels, and that's why I was so willing to put all my hope in Disney when it came to the Book of Boba Fett, only for them to absolutely lay waste to that character and his legacy, and then absolutely destroy The Mandalorian in the 3rd season of his own show. And that was just in the past 3 or so years. See, I know a lot of people feel like Star Wars died a lot earlier than that. It died with the sequel trilogy. But I had hope for Star Wars. In 2021, when the Book of Boba Fett came out, I started this channel so that I could talk about Star Wars. If it wasn't for Star Wars, I wouldn't have started this channel. That's how much love and desire I had to talk about it and interact with other people who loved it as much as I did. And I've gotten to a point where now I don't want to watch these things to review them. I don't want to watch them because it has a Star Wars label on it. I mean, you could literally put a Star Wars label on anything back in the day, and I would have bought it. I've never really liked waffles or pancakes, and I have a Mandalorian waffle maker that I would make Mandalorian waffles in all the time just because it had a helmet on them. I was willing to dive head first into every single thing. I had a Book of Boba Fett cosplay before the show was even out. I looked at reference pictures from an action figure that hadn't been released yet to make it. That's how on the hook they had me. But I think it's just been too long and there's been too many disappointments for me to have that kind of fervor and love and dedication to it anymore. Now, will I say that I won't watch any Star Wars project ever? That isn't true at all. At the end of the day, if they release something that to me looks interesting, I will see it. And I'll admit that I do have plans to watch the Mandalorian and Grogu film when it comes out in theaters, because it's a character that I used to be really into and I want to see what they do with it. It's kind of like when you hear a big car crash on the street behind you and you come out to see what it is. You're kind of horrified at what you might see, but you just have to check. I would love for Kathleen Kennedy and Disney to just give Star Wars a break, for us to recuperate from things like The Acolyte that not only ruined the rest of my love for Star Wars, but I think also cost me some brain cells and years off my life watching it, to be honest. I wish they'd take a break. They probably won't. I hope they don't destroy Andor, which is the only redeeming piece of Star Wars content that's come out in the past few years. But I think while I maintain a morbid curiosity for Star Wars, which will keep me from leaving it behind, I will tell you that I'm definitely leaving my love for Star Wars behind. At this point, I'm watching things just to see what happens. My love for Star Wars is essentially tied only to the original trilogy. Everything else is just a wait and see. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know if you're planning on leaving Star Wars behind in 2024 in the comments below.